Welcome to another podcast of Sustainability IT Talks. Well, another podcast. It's actually our second podcast.
Well, some time since we did the last one,
Yeah,
right?
it was 11 months ago.
Oh, not that
Yes.
long ago, right?
Yes, 11 months ago. It's a shame. And the reason is, of course, our agendas filled up. We didn't have any time to get together. And our bromance, Ola, focused completely on different aspects of our work.
Yeah, and then time flies by.
Yeah.
But amazing to be here again, right?
We're in Gothenburg today again, and we have a wonderful guest, Victor Norberg.
Yes, thank
Do
you.
I say it correctly?
Very well pronounced.
Okay, thank you very much. Victor, you're from Forward 2050.
Exactly, 2050 consulting firm, and we want to fast forward together. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity, a pod where you really show what together is between CHG
Correct.
and Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I think I hopefully can bring a completely other perspective to this as well.
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Awesome.
Yeah, great.
And just as a reminder, we do work for companies. I work for Microsoft, you work for CHG. But the things that we say on this podcast is actually our own opinions and not always reflected on what our company's opinions might be.
Correct.
Just to keep that as a listener or viewer as well.
Yeah, we're truly sponsored by. Anyway, but before we go and dive deep in Forward 2050, could you explain a little bit about yourself, Victor?
Yes, myself. I'm born and raised here from Gothenburg as well. And I have this just original and natural somehow interest in sustainability and everything that comes with it. I think it's I don't know, lifestyle. It's a way of being grown up with caring, nurturing about values, both what is value for yourself, for your surroundings, for your society, for nature, and seeing what we live from. What actually brings value in reality.
So the typically Swedish values.
I would, maybe not.
So
Maybe.
for me, yes, if I look upon Sweden, I think beautiful lakes, beautiful surrounding, awesome nature. So that's why I think, that's typically Swedish to think like this or not.
Yeah, somehow. But I mean, you wouldn't be able to live in a beautiful lake. I don't know if you've seen these video shows or those TV shows that comes up now where you're supposed to survive in the nature.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's value in one point, but in another way, you can't really survive. There are so many people today that can't survive on the nature, in the nature.
100%.
So is that value just the views and the scenic views of those lakes and forests? Or is the value actually what brings to you to everyday life that makes you go up, survive in an easy way, what makes your life comfortable?
That's an interesting perspective. So I have a friend of mine, he lives in Norway. And I've learned in Norway, and I'm not sure if that's the same here in Sweden, they say it's never the wrong weather. It might be the wrong clothing.
Is that typical Swedish saying?
Yeah, exactly. So again, before we head further, Ola, do you have something that you personally would like to ask Victor?
No, I would just love to hear the introduction and who he is and a little bit of the background stories that you just said. I think it's super interesting to as well to acknowledge actually what we as Scandinavians and Swedes are actually bringing to the world in that sense as well, to coming from nature and looking at how can we live in this world. But just as you acknowledge as well, I mean, we're not living in the Stone Ages anymore. We are living in a modern world.
So you say you're from the Gothenburg area. Do you live in the city or do you live in the natural surroundings?
I live in the city. And it was pretty funny. When I was younger, I said I never want to live in the city. It's dirty, too many people. It's just annoying, sounds everywhere. And my mother told me, like, you're going to change your mind when you grow up because you're going to realize that it's...
Victor, how old are you right now? Because
I'm grown up at least, but...
There's going to be a moment that you don't want to live in the city anymore.
Exactly.
That you go back to the country.
Yeah. And I'm waiting for that those days as well. But at the moment, I'm really happy to live in the city, but in a smaller city, because that's value for me. For me, life quality is walking to work 30 minutes. Or biking 10 minutes. I have all my friends within 15 minutes walk or bike ride. which you can use the Studentstel, the commuter bike ride. You pay 1 kroner per day to use this. That's really life quality to me, to walk around, to know people in a rather big city. Stockholm is a little bit too big. Gothenburg, it's right amount the size where you still recognize people, where people see you, where you see people. I think that's important.
And
So,
you can reach the other side of the city within 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Forward 2050.
Hmm?
That's based in multiple cities throughout Sweden. Am I correct?
Exactly. We're a small consultant firm based in Stockholm, Gothenburg, Linköping, Malmö, and some small parts in the north as well.
And how many people are working for Forward?
70 approximately.
Oh, that's
So we've
quite
been
a
just,
lot.
yeah, just organic growth, great values from origin, and I've had a hard trouble to take the next step from there, but I always get possibilities to grow within the company, and that's why I'm staying. I can't imagine a better employer, to be honest.
Wow.
Uh,
That's nice. So Forward 2050, that implies something, the name.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 2050. It's the climate target.
Mhm.
So we're basically originally focused on climate, and want to forward together as the vision. So yeah, that's what we do: bringing people together, working with business, because business is a huge part of it. Working with academia, because they have latest great knowledge, and we need to bring forward. But also working with politics and legislation, because we need that in order to get forward. And they're always, for of course obvious reasons, lacking behind. And finding the balance between those three aspects is so important.
So you're more like, or the organization is more like the connector in between.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah. The catalyzing aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What an
Yeah,
amazing
definitely.
guest we found that
Mhm.
probably have all of those new perspectives that we
Yeah.
will learn a lot from, I think.
Yeah, I just Googled and I found you and I was like, okay, this could be an interesting guy. And then you come up and you start
Yeah, I just
explaining.
got a weird text from your colleague yesterday from Felipe, and it's, oh, do you want to join this podcast? I straight away thought, okay, this is some scam. Who are these people?
Then you
Nigerian
see-
scam. Yeah, beautiful.
Where do I
beautiful.
click the link? Where do I pay?
Yeah, then you get a phone call from a Dutch number.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
Like,
But then you
okay.
realize that two guys like this, you probably can't create with AI, so it must be real.
Yeah. No, but actually, awesome, because we already had a short discussion up front this podcast. But Ola and I were during lunch also, discussing all kinds of topics, which I think currently are very important, which sits on the edge of AI, sustainability, perceptions, the way people think, and how sometimes rigid thoughts can be the problems in moving forward. And then you showed up with Forward 2015 and almost said the same things. So if we look towards what Forward 2050 is doing, what do you see as one of the big challenges right now in our current society that we need to tackle?
Oh, how long time do we have?
That's
Hey,
that's
keep it
why he
short.
brought a book.
No,
With a
but
long
I mean,
list.
from your day-to-day business, what do you think where a lot of misperception on sustainability is?
First of all, and to be completely frank, you discussed about what to name the pod as well,
Yeah.
sustainability,
Yeah.
IT talks,
Yeah.
and or not. And to be completely honest, I'm so sick of the word sustainability,
Correct. Yeah.
because it creates so much polarization. It's a buzzword. It doesn't mean anything to so many people. So I think it's more important to talk on the things that actually matters, what actually implies. I mean, what is it? It's about creating, as you said, more value for less. It's about reducing risks, about seeing the bigger picture in the long term, and not only focusing on short-term aspects. I mean, if I go and I purchase something, I had a discussion with a friend yesterday. It's like, what makes people think that I want to? I'm buying a certain product, a food stuff or a phone or whatever, and I'm basically only looking at this thing that I'm buying and the costs and what it means to me in the next couple of weeks.
As a consumer.
Exactly, as a consumer, but also as companies. I mean, the whole capital market is built on short-term profits.
Yeah.
It's not about long-term profits. It's not about TCO, like total cost of ownership, for those aspects. So how do you make people think about what effects a different choice have in the future? We are built, our minds, our psychology, our like evolution is built on making short-term decisions. How to make good long-term decisions, and how do we influence that?
Yes, I think it's a really interesting discussion. So the natural thing to do, and so I've done some research for my thesis on the barriers to circular business models, and one of the most important barriers is that ecological costs that coming out of a production are deferred to society, and that means that they can be very cheap. But as a consumer, what you naturally would do is buy the cheapest products if its quality is good and it's cheaper than product B, which might be more environmental friendly, but still more expensive. You still choose for A.
Yeah.
So, but if then you go into policies and governmental aspects, which is, I don't firmly believe that you can make the world from government control or policies. But still, the driver is that you want to bring those ecological costs into the cost price. And it should be natural and that would be the cheapest product because it doesn't create any harm.
Exactly. You're talking about externalities, pricing
Exactly.
externalities and making them internal pricing.
So, but how do you look upon that then? Because eventually, then you kind of need to force up companies that if they create large ecological costs, that they take the full responsibility for it.
Yeah. But I mean, the only way that would work is if everybody does it.
Correct.
It's the same. It's what the tragedy of the commons somehow.
Yeah.
If everybody does it, then it's okay. But if only a few people does it, then you'll always have companies or people who will have the advantage over those who actually does. And then you have not a fair competition. I mean, and that's the way that European Union has built itself right now. We have an unfair competition where not that serious producers outside of European Union in Asia, they don't care about these things. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about climate in many senses, and they can just push in these products. But what you don't see as a consumer is that when you don't support then your local or regional or national peers or companies, then they will disappear. But no one thinks about that. No one thinks about what effect your choices have. If you put it down to a smaller context, you live in a small house somewhere in the forest, maybe then, or in a smaller city or village, and you have a supermarket, a local supermarket. But you think it's always cheaper for me to go to the large supermarket a couple of kilometers away. If you don't buy there at the smaller one, they will disappear. And then in 10 years' time, you won't have a supermarket there. But you don't think that far when you're making your decisions. So how can you influence, also with technology, but also with the human behaviors, to understand the consequence of that action, not buying your groceries at that local supermarket, and straight away making the connection to the supermarket will disappear in 10 years. Can I live with that or not?
So when we come into those discussions, of course, one of the things that you need to think of is, okay, what kind of data do we need to have at hand as a customer or as a business to be able to actually convince someone to make that choice? What do you think? What kind of data do we need to have to be able to see that, hey, I should go to the local supermarket, or I should buy this computer instead of that because of X, Y, Z?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a clear answer to that, to be honest.
But in your discussion as a company, when you consult your customers, or what is it that you're pushing them for to think of as next, as they maybe don't have today or not thinking in their strategy?
To be completely honest, I think that many companies, and definitely not all, many companies in terms of sustainability, and that's why I don't want to talk about sustainability. You talked previously about the sustainability department, and it's so much silos, not only on the bigger corporations, but also on the smaller corporations. And I think that we all are so somehow stuck in what we do that we don't see the broader picture. Sustainability department don't talk to supply chain department. They don't talk to marketing departments. And I think that's where your point of view is very interesting as well. That, okay, we want to build a value, we want to build a brand, we want to work towards the customer, building and facing basically the value for our products in a sustainability way. If we can work with that without naming sustainability one single time, then we bringing value actually on the table. And that's actually something I wanted to talk or ask you about. You said the Swedish thing about value. Like, what is value to you?
So
Real.
that's a definition that I use all the time when I present towards customers that I talk to or in events that I am. So I don't like the word sustainability either because it's not clearly defined what it means. People tend to see it as something that has to do with the environment and climate change, and it very has a dogmatic kind of view on it. From hey, the world's going to end, so and we have to do it. So it's something that is pushed upon us. So I changed the view from okay, what is value?
Exactly.
And in the presentations that I use, I speak about, I always explain the circular economy, which circular economy is like an ecological network. And it has many aspects to it to make it work, but it's a full sort of supply chain or value chain, as you can explain it. And in goes value. And value you can express in many different things. So it could be actually investments, but it could also be the energy used. It could be the raw materials, rare earth materials that goes in. But it could also be the creativity or happiness of people, intellectual property. But once you start to talk about value, then everybody can relate to that specific idea. And it's far easier for them to understand what sustainability actually means. It's about creating value without doing harm to your to the system where you're highly dependent on to be healthy, to be prosperous, to be successful. But that's the take that I rather use, and also when our proposition, and we believe and we have proven that our proposition of leasing is better for the environment. I always try to explain that or to translate that to the people, planet, and profit side. So what does it mean for the people from a social perspective and about their personal happiness and what does it mean for the earth? So how you can reduce your carbon footprint or use less materials or have less negative chemical impact on the earth, or what does it mean from a business perspective? So what is actually the value that can harvest from a monetary point of view?
Exactly. And I mean, that's the problem with externalities, as you said, to going back to the legal aspect as well.
Yeah.
It's like you can't price externalities as a company in one way, but you will get affected by them, and then they will cost you. If you take climate, for instance, well, prices will go up for insurances, definitely, if we don't work with climate aspects. If prices go up for insurances, your license to operate or your
100%.
prices as a company will increase. You will have to increase your prices for your products in the end, bringing value to customers.
And that's where you said something so incredibly important, because you started about the sustainability department and everything is siloed. But that's exactly the problem.
Exactly.
Everything is siloed.
Yes.
So nobody looks over the fence and what's happening over there and looks from the full value chain. So that's where I really see. So you see the same things happening as we see.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we're preaching for the choir here.
No, but hey, but we're also preaching to our audience.
No, but I think that's the interesting thing about this, as we have presented now a few times together as well, where you as a financing company talk about what kind of value you bring in, we as a product maker, which in that sense represent Microsoft and the computers that we build or the softwares that we build, I often say that if we don't bring in value, you're not going to buy my product, regardless if that's, that you think that it's a sustainable product. But what is then sustainable? Is it because you're going to type faster for a long time? Maybe that's sustainable for you because you become more productive. Or
it's very individual what value is, I would say. It's about individual, and I think, to be honest, that you can, and to be honest, that a lot of large corporations as well, they create value that we actually don't have in the beginning.
Or that we don't need. What do you mean
exactly?
with that?
Yeah, exactly. The values that we actually don't need. We think we need it. We didn't know we needed it, and then in the end, this is the only thing we want. But we
become dependent on it.
Exactly. And I mean, social media is one of those. I mean, it brings so much value with social media in one way, but I think also that we could be so much better off without it sometimes, or parts of it in many senses.
If you look towards the engineers of Facebook, Instagram, and all those social media companies, you know exactly how to make you trigger on all the dopamine levels that you become immensely addicted
to social media. But isn't that the value? That you then get dopamine.
Yeah.
Hey, great value for you.
Yeah.
You got a whole injection of dopamine for 10 hours a day.
Correct.
Is it good for the rest of your body?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
So I rather think in people as everybody has its potential, and you try to reach out the maximum potential of a person.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, sitting on social media all day is not really creating a lot of potential.
Probably not. I was just triggering a little bit, but I think that's the interesting part of this, as we spoke about. The word sustainability is way too broad.
Yeah.
Means way too much different things depending on who you ask. And I think that's also the interesting of in our daily work, where we actually get to meet those kind of people. And we are probably one of the few as well in our daily work that we actually get to meet people from those different departments, either from the sustainability office or from procurement or from the others. So we are often the one that can look over that fence.
Yeah.
And I think that as we spoke about polarization between, it's of course it's polarization between a biker and a car driver. It's about polarization between countries. It's about polarization in companies as well, where you have market versus sustainability, team and purchasing team, and you create polarization everywhere. So how do we integrate this instead? How do we work together in a better way, not creating silos?
Well, I also, if you look at talking about those silos again, I was thinking about that. So each department has his own unique budget. And that's the amount of money they can spend. And they need to create a certain amount of money to come in again. Dus that's the value perspective. So they're driven solely to maintain themselves. So that's the first goal. So they will be always taking decisions which is good for that specific department, because that's how they're driven and this is how they're organized in a hierarchical structure. But the funny thing is, if you do not specifically drive from that perspective, but you look and say, what is the greater value we can create, and you start working together with the other departments, your value goes up 10 times. But that's the difficulty as a person, to really understand that you need others to be successful. And that means it's partly ego-driven, even from a department point of view.
We're back to the people, back to the individuals again. And I think that's a key here.
Yeah, but it's also because they don't feel safe. And when the ego comes out, when you don't feel safe, because it's a protection mechanism coming from, your reptile brain, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot about change management. It's a lot about relationships, about people feeling and this psychological safety in a company, corporations, to enhance and enable working together, both within a company but also within the value chain.
Yeah,
I heard you talk the last time in your last pod about investing in tier 4 suppliers, for instance. And we have many companies, they don't want to do that. They say, why should we do that? We want to lease. things. We want to focus on our core business. Why should we invest in a tier 4 supplier outside of Europe?
I agree, but for instance, if you decide, hey, I want to only focus on my sole mission, and therefore I'm going to make sure that other companies take care of those aspects that I'm not interested in. Of course, you still can make a conscious decision to work with companies who have got their act together. So then I don't have any issues with it. But if you just go for the cheapest option and not really aware of the fact, for instance, you work together with a company that's not certified in any way from an environmental status, that's for me, it's a minimal requirement and a license to operate. Then it's an issue.
I mean, it's what I'm saying is that it's a discrepancy. It's focusing on your core business, which has been happening the last couple of years, versus involving suppliers, as you did in Microsoft with involving the tier 4 suppliers, investing in the tier 4 suppliers. And this is two different ways of seeing it. Some companies don't want to invest in those tier 4 suppliers, but I think that it's necessary. I think it's important to work closer, to cooperate within the whole value chain, not only upstream, but also downstream, because you need to understand what's happening upstream, what's happening downstream, to cooperate, to bring those really great solutions, to just crack those walls in the silos within the whole value chain, using the data that are available in the complete value chain and creating and scaling solutions that are truly bringing value, more value with less resources. So I think,
Yeah, I think that's super important in that sense too. If you're going to have a greater impact on the society that you live in, you need to involve the people that you do business with to sort of share that responsibility of whatever
you
you
mentioned
create.
something really important that I think is the problem.
Tell me what it is.
Too much data. So he just said it.
Yeah, but
so how are you going to extract the correct value out of that?
Yeah, but isn't that the great that's leading us into what all people are talking about, AI?
Of course.
I mean, what is the reason that we can have those large language models today and start to make new decisions and etc.? That's data. So we need that data collection. And then I think today it's easier than it has ever been to actually start to understand what kind of data that you have.
So Victor, do you see that happening within Forward 2050?
Yeah, definitely. We work a lot with data, and it's hard to I mean, there is so much data. It's hard to extract data. It's hard to get true data from like activity data, real data, not just estimates, to make real good decisions on it. But I mean, it's too much. Of course, AI is a really important aspects to help sort from this and to make those right decisions. And I think what AI really needs to focus on is to narrow it down, bringing the correct one, making the quality checks of it, and pushing it all the way to values, to what value is it for the customer in the end, and what should we actually focus on, and to aggregate it.
But isn't that when and I think that's both part of AI and all these discussions about agents is the future of things. Isn't that where you then start to bring in agents to do some of those quality checks and start to educate it on what it needs to do?
Definitely.
So you can go and tell a real person what it needs to maybe collect more data of, or we have too much of this, so we don't need more data of that. It's enough.
So everywhere from collecting the data, analyzing the data, making the right form of recommendations to it, and then there comes the human aspects of how do I actually interpret what is important for you, and how do I convince you that this is the right decision.
So isn't that the issue also? Isn't that an interface issue also?
Yeah, I think that, as we talked about previously as well, the interface between AI, between tech and the human nature, I think there lies the sweet spot. This is the largest challenges, but also where most things can happen and
I
great
also
things can
think
happen.
it will be probably a shift over time. I mean, when we have presented the last few times now, I often end it with a slide that talks about how AI is perceived so differently depending on which age category you come from. I often refer to as my daughter said, I think it was last year before she graduated. Oh, Dad, I don't know how they did this before they had ChatGPT. Like, what do you mean? 2 years ago, how did you do it? But that's the perspective of the younger generation now. It's just a natural part of how they do things. And then the middle between that and the older category of, okay, how are we going to use this? This is super dangerous. We should stop all of those things. So I think we are then probably starting to see as well where the younger generation starts to come in and they start to see all the enablement this can help you and achieve things. I see that you're sitting and thinking of something.
Yeah, so again, if you have it talking about the interface and how to interpret data, it's about human involvement and actually identifying what's valuable. So and in the early days without AI, we had to determine itself, and we had to do a lot of research and have a good overview. Currently with AI, it's made a lot easier. But the thing is, do you still then understand what the value is of something? Because everything becomes easier because it comes to you, and it's spoon fed to you.
Yeah, in one way, yeah.
So, aren't we losing a lot of value because AI and all the technical advancements spoon fed us this information? Because it's too easy.
But doesn't that also then give you the chance to focus on other values, and maybe those values are maybe not part of your work value, as we discussed.
Well, that's what you said earlier, Victor, about what is valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
But so in Forward to 2050, your role is to catalyze everything. Are these aspects that come along in the job?
With AI, you mean?
No, I mean, so do you go down to you talk with the municipality, you're talking to the business, you're talking to institutes, probably universities. So is the human value an important part in these discussions on how to transfer to higher technological advancement?
I don't quite really understand the question, to be honest. What one more time?
Well, again, so we've been discussing how it's important for you to be close to your friends, be able to work, walk or cycle to your job, and that makes true value for you. And we're also living in a society where everything is extremely complex, and we still have to make decisions.
Exactly.
So how do you still stick to that the value that it creates on a human level? What is truly valuable?
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Yeah. And we talked a lot about, decision making is hard. We make so many decisions every single day, both as individuals, but also as a company. And I think this is the important part of how to make, you can never know everything to make those rationalized decisions in the end. AI can help you make those decisions to make it easier to also focus on that what is really important for you, but both as a company and as an individual. As a company, you want to focus on bringing value to the customers. Yeah, but AI, digital and tech tools can help us understand the whole value chain to reduce our risks, to not having focus on risks all the time. They can help us with that, to keep track of what's happening in the value chain, that we don't have any human rights violations, that we have low emissions in the complete value chain, and then we can focus on bringing value to you as a customer in the end. As well, of course, analyzing what actually is value, what kind of consumer habits you as a consumer, as a usage of a computer, for instance, what is value and not, and to make those decisions in order to pinpoint that.
I think that's an interesting one, and where I also see that probably AI will start to bring in a lot of new perspectives, because you can probably then start to understand new connections.
Exactly.
How are things connected to each other, so I can then make a more sort of informed decisions
Exactly.
of if I should buy product A or product B, or do activity A or activity B, based on probably new insights that was either way too hard to understand before, or that you needed, a whole company with data scientists that would try to explain some numbers to you that you probably couldn't even understand.
Yeah, but also imagine if you would, with AI, we talked about the silos before and the incentives of different. I know you talked about also the internal carbon pricing, for instance, but imagine that AI could be used to incentivize the right things in a company. You don't have any hierarchies, you don't have any structures or silos. You use the technology in order to gather the right decisions for each individual, gather the data over the whole company, the whole value chain, and for each individual in the company, that person, him or her, gets to make the right decision depending on that information, and not just what is my incentive in my department.
Well, that's an interesting take, but it means that everybody needs to sort of upload his goals, incentives into the system, and then AI should just leverage it all out so that there's a maximum amount of value or something like that.
But why should every individual have a personal individual goal? Shouldn't the goal, the ultimate goal, be then the company's goal?
Society
or
goal,
societal goal.
or company goal.
Yeah, now we're only going to 1984. I'm just no. I think of course the individual needs to have feeling valuable.
Exactly. Yeah.
It needs to feel valuable to be successful,
Mm.
and so their personal goal will be to add something to the greater good.
Definitely. But what I'm saying is the input or the output. So the
Okay,
input shouldn't be the personal individual goal. That's the output of what you as an individual can contribute with to the most, and how you contribute to this company goal, and how the company goal contributes to society to enable creating value, using the possibilities, and reducing the risks.
Yeah, but the input
Is
to
that possible?
Comes then from what is you as a company, what is your mission with the business that you have set up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would that be possible with an AI model, or bringing? Would that be future of?
I can talk from a Microsoft perspective. When I look at us as employees, I mean, we have the mission as a company then to make sure that every person in every organization can achieve more. So everything that we build or do or whatever it is should enable that kind of thing. So of course I could tie that back to the decisions that I would as an employee take on a daily basis. Okay, with the thing that I present together with Allard, make sure that the people in the audience could achieve something more. Yes or no? So I think it probably then comes down to how do we route our business models, business missions, to make them understandable for the employees then. So if they don't understand it, how are they going to make sure that they take the right decisions, the output, as you said?
So, but you're also in Microsoft talking about the planetary computer.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of those things, but that is also, how do we make sure that we understand the planet when we make decisions? Because that's also part of that making sure that we have all that data combined in a place and then making it accessible for the people. I think it's a super interesting way of thinking, and then you put AI and all of those so you can make it again available. I often think of AI as democratizing a lot of new things that was just not available for you as an individual before.
And now I all of a sudden have the information easily available to be able to choose from one foodstuff from another, to see, okay, for me it's important with biodiversity. For me it's important that this food is produced
but
nearby,
I think
and now I have
also,
the information in my hand.
I think also in the sense of that, if we think of value, I mean, if I look at myself personally outside of work as well, what has AI brought to me the last few years? A lot of creativity. Because all of a sudden I start to ask Copilot a lot of maybe stupid questions, but maybe creative questions whenever I like to, which then sparks a lot of new creativity.
Exactly.
So I think we are creating a lot of new value and opportunities for a lot of new people.
It's new perspectives. And I've been living, for instance, a lot in Germany for once, and I think every time traveling or meeting new people from different regions is really important. You crack your bubble. And I think this bubble is just, you create it back to this bubble within 2 weeks' time. So I go travel, I meet new people, or I meet people that I never met before, getting new perspectives, and someone tells me something, okay, you look at it in this perspective. They crack my bubble. And then straight back again. I'm back into my bubble. And with this Copilot, of course, if I also ask the right questions to, okay, help me look outside of my bubble, help me crack my bubble, and then great things can definitely happen in terms of creativity and maybe coming to those ideas that really can scale, because that's the issue here. We need ideas that can scale in the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting discussions this, huh?
Yeah. And I think we've been talking, I think, more than 40 minutes now.
We had the plan to make this 40 minutes, Jesus.
So,
the last time we met, we spoke for hours, and they said that they had to change batteries because they run out of battery before we do. They bring coffee, we just continue.
So I think we should go to the end statement. So maybe everybody should have an end statement.
An end statement.
An end statement. So I have one. AI is rubbish without human value. That's my end statement.
Your end statement. Oh, I haven't. I'll give it to you, Victor, so I can think a bit longer.
What do you think, Victor?
What I think, Victor, from this discussion, that's hard. It's really hard. I think that was it was a good conclusion that's made, Allard.
Thank you.
But also, and not but, I'm not gonna say and. I'm gonna say and. I think it's not completely rubbish, but just as we said, the sweet spot, the interception between AI and humans. This is where the magic happens somehow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I will actually add to that, since this is Sustainable IT Talks, I think that's where we then also will start to see a lot of new value coming to bring sustainability to whatever it is that you put in that word.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my end statement.
And we started with, we don't like sustainability as a word. And now we're around again. Victor,
that's called circular.
Yeah, that's called circular talks. Victor, thank you very much for being on our podcast. Maybe in the future we reach out to you again.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me in.
Yeah. And
Dank je wel, as you say.
Thank you. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you. All right. Cheers.